Okay, welcome to the new week 0 session of Feature Bootcamp. We call this Write a Movie in 8 weeks because it is an 8-week course that's going to take you from your idea to finished first draft of your brand new feature script within this time frame. This is the first course that I offered on ScriptCamp, and writing features is my area of specialty and interest, so this is definitely a really good core course if you want to just learn the basics. We are in a stage channel, so you will have to actually request to speak if you want to speak on the microphone out loud, which you should also be prepared to do if you're sharing your logline or brainstorming your idea or otherwise just want to solicit feedback. You should get used to speaking out loud, answering questions, and receiving feedback verbally. We are on ScriptCamp right now, which is part of the Skill Camp group of servers. We have lots of free classes, table reads, swaps, writers groups, workshops, and other things like this. Some of them are free and public, like this one here, and the first couple weeks of most courses are going to be free and open to everyone. And then beyond the first 2 weeks, the classes are going to be for supporting members. The boot camps and labs, for instance, are for supporting members. So if you want to become a supporting member of Skill Camp, which is a nonprofit, it's a 501c3 nonprofit that offers free and low-cost classes to learn new skills and reach your life goals, you can sign up at scriptcamp.net. You can become an unlimited member for just $29 a month, and you will get access to every single event on every server, over 100 hours of events every month, exclusive Discord channels, video library of recordings of all previous classes. You get script coins every month that you can use to spend on readings and feedback and things like this, and you get huge discounts off consultations and proofreads. And if you subscribe yearly, you will be saving 40% off of that. So definitely, if you want to take an entire boot camp or just attend the many different types of events that we have on the servers, then you should become a member. So, tiny bit about me. This is my 6th year in LA. No, wait, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think, because I was gone for a year, probably 7th year in LA. Going into 7th year. I moved here in 2015 with no connections at all. Got signed 2 years later for the first time after placing in top 10 of Launchpad Features Contest, and since then placed in Nickel quarterfinals, Nickel semifinals, wrote an episode of Creepshow for the Shudder Network, and was on a couple lists, as you can see here. Have had a few scripts set up in town. The strike made those things really complicated, and obviously the industry is quite different now, but I teach the boot camps and writers labs and have been working as a professional writer since 2017. We have 3 boot camps going on at any given time, at least. We have Pilot Boot Camp, which runs for 6 weeks and takes you from idea to finished draft of a brand new pilot script, either half an hour or full hour. That's currently, it was in this slot, but now that's going to be changing into the Feature Boot Camp slot, which was Fridays 6 to 8. So that's going to, you can just ignore the date that's listed here, the December 1st thing. These will be swapping. So this current time slot is going to be this feature class for the next 8 weeks, and the Friday 6 to 8 slot will be changing into TV. We have also a novel boot camp on WordCamp, which is our novel writing server. That's Saturdays 12 to 2 p.m. That's wrapping up next week, but we will be starting a new one soon. We also have multiple swaps per week, so if you have written a script and you want to get feedback on it from another member of the server that will read it carefully and give you notes within a short time frame, we have 2 of those a week, Tuesdays at 5 p.m., Fridays at 9 a.m. All of these are in Pacific time. And for you novelists, live readings of novels, short stories, poems, and nonfiction, we have 2 of those a week as well. Saturday at 7, Thursday at 10 a.m. And table reads too, Sunday at 2, Tuesday 11, Saturday 1 a.m. Pacific, which is the international time slot, so for those in other continents and things like this. Here's just a sample of everything that we have going on right now. There's so much stuff. So many different events. Some of the majority of things that you see here are just free and open to everyone. A few of them, like the boot camps and the labs, are going to be for subscribers. And we will have new boot camps coming out next month, such as video editing on Film Camp, script analysis, which will be on Script Camp, web design, and Discord bot developers lab, which is Code Camp. That's going to be Thursdays and Fridays starting in early February. So, plenty of things to take, plenty of events, plenty of different ways to use your membership if you are a member. And we also welcome volunteers. So if you're volunteering to host a certain group, or genre meeting or something like this, then let us know. And we love our community involvement. So we have lots of opportunities, lots of time slots, ways to host or co-host groups, to be an event host, things like that. So we're starting on week 0 today. So we say it's an 8-week course, but really we have 9 because this is like the preview week, the extra week. Or I guess we have 10 really, because if we wait until the end of that final week, that's like 10 total. So that's about what you're going to get to write a feature in Hollywood. You get about between 8 to 12 weeks to write a first draft. So we're going to kind of average that out right in the middle at 10. You have to be able to sort of consistently write features within 10 weeks with a high level of quality, with a high level of organization, and a strong knowledge of things like structure. And you have to be able to not only be the writer of the script, but when you are selling a script for a movie, you then become the script department, meaning that you then have to make adjustments and changes and rewrites, sometimes on set, sometimes on the day of, sometimes the day before, any of these things. So you have to really be an expert in that script and know how it is working on every level and be able to communicate with everyone else that is working on the same script in those same terms. So that's why we try to at least approach this with some sense of standardized terminology and vocabulary and just the mechanics of what we're doing. Like, we are trying to teach in this course how to write feature films for a Hollywood market, meaning that there are certain conventions, certain structures that follow a certain format that you can bend or manipulate or twist. You don't have to always exactly stick to those, but you have to know what they are and how they work, because if you want to work professionally, that is what you are going to be expected to know and to be able to communicate about every step of the way until the movie is done, or else you're going to get fired off your own movie. So we have week 1 is about finalizing the logline and filling out the sketchbook. So this week we'll start on loglines, but you don't actually have to have it really finished until end of next weekend. Week 2 is outlining, so that's going to be on story beats. We're going to be talking structure all throughout week 2. And week 3 as well, as we move from story beats to scene cards, which is an expansion of story beats. So the story beats being a broad overview outline, and the scene cards being a much more specific and granular page-by-page outline, so we ideally will know what happens on every single page of the feature before you even begin. You don't even need to download screenwriting software until halfway through the class, for which we usually recommend Arc Studio or Writer Duet, which both have great free options that have almost all the features as the pro versions. You don't need to get those until week 4, which is February 25th. So don't worry too much about writing those, formatting your scenes perfectly on the page, or you don't have to start writing your pages, you don't have to start writing dialogue, you don't need to write a single word of dialogue or a single word of properly formatted text until halfway through this course. So we're focusing on the essentials, and the essentials are things like, what is a really strong movie premise that feels self-contained and high concept, and like it could actually fuel and power a whole feature film idea, because a feature story is kind of a complicated machine in a lot of ways, right? It's like 100+ pages of coherent narrative, which need to be deeply visual, but also rendered in a text-only format. So there's a lot of weird contradictions and idiosyncrasies and difficulties about this format. Most people don't grow up reading these, or even read them into adulthood, and maybe when they start writing have not read that many scripts, which is the first problem you should always address. If you're trying to learn how to do this, you need to start reading consistently, paying a lot of attention and taking notes, and keeping up with things that come out every year, watching the market, reading the blacklists, and paying a lot of attention to what modern specs look like and what is selling nowadays and what works nowadays on the page, what has been done in the past, what is now antiquated, what is the modern spec way of writing, and how you can find your way or your place in between all those things. You must be reading to be a writer. There's no way around that. There's no shortcut. There's no cheat code. We start the script on week 4, so by then you will have a complete set of scene cards, meaning you know what happens at every scene, ideally on every page of the story before you even write one word of it. That might be more planning than you're used to, so I recommend you actually just give it a try and try to accustom to that idea, and it's going to be really valuable to you when you're actually working in production on a movie or in pre-production on a movie. You're doing rewrites for multiple people who do not have a consistent vision. You have to be the one with a consistent vision. You have to be the one steering the ship. And it's a lot of responsibility, and it's a big job, and you are managing a company in some ways when you are the sort of script department. So if you do not pull your weights, they will hire someone who can run the company better. So you got to, learning all the structural stuff is not just some, trick to make you write over-pasteurized Hollywood garbage. It is intended to help you in the career aspect of this by teaching you the common terminology, ideas, and rules and mechanics that you will be expected to kind of know at the highest levels of this. And you will be always expected to speak in those terms and keep a room full of people who have very different approaches and perspectives on the same page. That's a tough thing to do if you're like, well, I don't use 3-act format. I use 9-sequence format. That was perfected by the Romans in 37 BC. It's like the executives you're working with will not go out of their way to learn 37-sequence format. So you have to kind of use what they are used to. And if you are not using what they're used to, you at least have to be able to translate what you were doing into that same common shared language. So very key and very important to learn how 3-act structure works like the back of your hands. You will know your own script really well because you know how each of the parts are working and what each part is for and what it's doing and what would happen if you removed it or elongated it or truncated it or any of these other things. And then thereby you'll be able to do your best to keep the reins on and be able to wrangle the great beast all the way to the end of the process unscathed, ideally. I mean, it seems the more you do this, the more it seems like a miracle that any movie gets made at all. So week 4 is on beginning. Week 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all about working through the script. So every week you're going to be going basically another quarter of the way through the script, or another fifth of, what is it? Yeah, there's 5 weeks there. So another 20% of the way through, meaning you'll be writing about 20 to 25 pages every week from that point on. But since you will have a really clear scene card plan throughout the whole thing, you won't need to worry too much about, well, what happens next? How do I get to the next moment? This part's boring me. All those things are immaterial if you have the entire plan in front of you of what exactly needs to happen in each step. So that's why we do the planning at the beginning. And especially if you're developing an idea from the ground up with a manager, a development executive, or something else, they're going to want to be able to start broad and work down to more specific. You're not going to be able to do a great job of development if you're like, well, I just start with a character and I just see where it goes. It's not really the approach for writing feature films for the most part. That's more of the kind of independent writer-director kind of format. If you want to be writing scripts for big Hollywood movies, you kind of have to be able to work within the confines that are presented to you by the idea of the thing that you're working on, right? Like by whoever has given you this thing. And so often in features, it'll be like, now we have a movie that is going to be based on Kit Kats, right? Okay, what's the Kit Kat movie going to be? Then you have to figure that out. Okay, so we finished the first draft by March 31st. So you have like a little more than a month from today. Wait, is that right? Yeah, so you have all of February. No, 2 months. Yeah, okay. You have all of February and all of March, plus an extra week at the beginning there. So should be plenty of time. And breaking it up into these steps kind of ensures that you are starting at the ground level. You're starting with a strong foundation. Starting a movie with a premise that is not solid is a bad idea because the more you build on it, eventually you will realize that it will collapse under itself. You're going to need to go back and make adjustments to make it make sense, and then your Jenga tower has collapsed, and now you have set yourself back, and now you're having to refigure things out, and that is just disastrous to momentum and to your motivation for the most part. Many people's motivation, I should say. There is the rare person that is sort of motivated by setbacks that's like, wow, I can't wait to conquer that setback that's going to cost me extra weeks or months of work. If you are that kind of person, this is definitely the right career for you. But even if you're not, we don't want to be throwing extra rakes into our path at the beginning of the Olympics, right? Like if you show up at the Olympic track race with a wheelbarrow full of rakes and you hurl them in front of yourself, you're probably going to step on a couple of them. So we're trying to have a rake-free track ahead of us, meaning that strong idea to begin with. A strong idea comes from is embodied in a strong logline. So you, by spending the extra time on this logline up front, and then spending the extra time on the sketchbook, and then on the story beats, and then on the scene cards, and each of these things in turn, you are adding layers to that foundation to make sure that when you start assembling, the top level of it, which is the script, that everything beneath it is working together to create a machine that works in perfect, sync or harmony or whatever it is. It's not going to be perfect your first time you do this. It's really hard to write a feature, even harder to write a good feature, and to write a great feature is almost impossible, right? So, and then to write a great feature that everyone agrees is great is actually impossible. So this is very difficult, and there's a lot of very time-consuming and challenging steps that go into this. But that's why you're here. If you hear that and you're interested and not turned away, you actually are excited by those challenges and by these these possible setbacks and by these obstacles and by all the difficulty and pain of this. If that makes you excited, then you are in the right place for sure. If you're already thinking this sounds like too much work, then I would not take the course, and I would not be a writer. I would look into the many other types of art that you can do. Of course, you don't have to be a writer just because you are a creative. But you must accept that this is struggle, and it's a long struggle. It takes many years to be able to write features at the highest levels. And this is a reason that this is the high-risk, high-reward type of writing, right? It goes quicker. It's like more Gold Rush style, more speculative. It's more based on boom and bust and concepts like heat than it is necessarily of direct literary quality or things like that. But by choosing this field, you are accepting that you are going into one of the hardest fields to break into in the world, one of the hardest types of art to create. It is one of the highest paid and one of the most prestigious, and potentially one that can get you hanging out with celebrities one day and things like this. Yes, that is true. But you accept the difficulty of that, and you know there's millions of people trying to do this, and there are not millions of slots. Okay. What are we doing? So, I think just because we had a little bit of a late start today, I won't start with the calling on people for the voice discussion portion, but I will allow you guys in the chat. At this moment, if you wish to tell us about who you are, where you're coming from, what you're hoping to learn, maybe who your favorite writers are, or what you're hoping to write, anything like that, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us about you, your objectives, or your questions, or anything like that. And I will come back. I'll do a few more slides, but I will soon come back to read them out. Looks like we also have a question up from YouTube from Alessandro. Is this pre-recorded? I don't know, Alessandro. You tell me. No, all classes are always live. You can watch, if you're a member, you'll get access to a full video library of every event that we've done in the past. If you are watching, or if you're if you're not an unlimited subscriber, you'll still be able to watch back the recordings of the free public classes like this one on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and I think that's it. Is there one more? But we have a couple different social media channels that you can watch back all the free and public events on whenever you want. Okay, so feel free to tell us about yourself there. I'll wait for you folks to finish typing that. As you're letting us know who you are and anything you're curious about or anything you want to learn, I will go through just the next couple slides on just ground rules, so you can just hopefully be listening while you're typing. So, ground rules. I would go into this not expecting to write a masterpiece. The goal of this is not to write something amazing, and it's certainly not to write something that will sell, or something that will get you any real one specific results. You have to kind of go into this understanding that it's like going to the gym, and the first, 10 features you write may not be all that good, and they don't need to be. The goal is not to make them all that good. You're not trying to become a professional overnight, and you almost certainly won't. In the same sense that if you do your first ever painting, chances are it's not going to be ready to be hung in a museum right away. And the challenges and difficulties of getting a movie into production are similarly difficult to getting a painting into a museum. So there's a lot of steps and a lot of challenges. So don't expect to get your first script that you have written produced. Don't expect to sell it. Don't expect anyone to even give you any good notes on it. It's a little disheartening and challenging to start doing this because so often you begin and all you get are negative notes, and that's tough to start with when you spend months on something, or weeks, or however long you spent writing the script, where not many people are used to or are fully accustomed or accepting of this idea that I can spend a ton of time and effort on something and then everyone will say that was kind of bad. That kind of breaks the risk or the effort reward center of our brains in some ways that we've been trained so long that the more you spend on something, the more of a reward you will get from it. But that's not always true, especially not in something as subjective as this or something as technical and something that is as specific and niche as this, when there are this many expectations tied to it, this much history behind it, and this many other people trying to do it, then it becomes an even greater challenge than it was before, right? So I would try to get used to that idea that you're not trying to write a masterpiece, you're writing something to get better and to improve and to build your skills and to learn how to write a movie. Because you need to learn how to write a movie before you can write a movie. And you can't write a movie until you have written a movie. You see what I mean? You have to actually try and maybe write some bad scripts to begin with and sort of view that as your primary job at the start. So, we are also going to try to encourage you to get used to the idea of sharing your work with both me and the other students here and everyone, even at the early stages. It can be tough to hear big notes at early stages, but I would try to work on the skill of not being too discouraged by that. Or from even by hearing something like, this idea isn't quite working right now, that does not mean the idea is bad and you are bad and you should stop and you should give up. That means that there might be some changes that need to be made here. Problems have solutions. And part of being a writer is being able to adjust and take feedback and take notes and adjust accordingly. That's not to say that you always have to take all suggestions or notes that I give or anyone in any of these courses or groups gives you. It's ultimately up to you, and we don't care. Like, it's your script. You can do what you want with it. But I would try to practice getting better at receiving and incorporating notes, because that is such a massive, massive, massive part of this. So last, we would say to please use your real name, or at least a nickname that sounds like a real name, instead of a username. That's going to be really, that rule is kicking in after this, the free weeks for the opening of these courses. So if you're just joining and just want to see what it's all about and try it out, you don't have to use your real name right away. But we recommend, once the course really gets going, so in the week 3 type time, change your username from, Master Kitty, Hello Kitty Master Chief 69420 or whatever it is, to your actual name, because in the industry you will be using your real name as well. Okay, so that's just kind of some of the basic ground rules. I have more specific ground rules on the kind of idea I would recommend choosing, but first I think I just want to see the introductions that people have given us. So thank you everyone who's shared. So let's see what we've got here. We have, starting with Becky. Becky is trained as a screenwriter, writing children's lit at the moment with a first look deal. She wants to be multi-format writer like Neil Gaiman or Douglas Adams. Great, thank you, Becky. Taylor says objectives are get a solid writing schedule with a little bit of pressure applied to me, hoping to learn how to really hone in on a concept and flesh it out. Great, yeah, a lot of people really like the bootcamp cut sort of format, because if nothing else, then it offers these really concrete goalposts and deadlines where you have to be done with this by this time. It's not like there are grades or you get thrown out of the course or anything like that, but just having that little bit of extra psychological goalposts in place is useful for a lot of folks. Taylor says, I'm currently working on a really low-concept drama that's very character-driven. Favorite writers are Aaron Sorkin and Emerald Fennell. Great, thank you, Taylor. Anymore says, I'm Shahariyar. I'm not a screenwriter, but I write novels, mostly mystery, psychological thriller. I'm here to have new experiences. Favorite writer is Kafka. Great, thank you so much. Glad to have you. Vicky says, I'm trying to set an experiment in motion, because I'm writing a fantasy book, and I want to see if I can do an adaptation based only on the beats I have for the book. Okay, great. Not even really an adaptation at that point. That's sort of just a pilot version of this outline and then a novel version of this outline, but that's totally fine. You can do that. Thanks, Vicky. Touch of the Poet says, I'm hoping to write a second better draft of a feature I've been working on lately. Never finished the first draft. Oh, well then, you are, I guess you're still in the first draft then. If you can't really write a second draft unless you did finish the first draft, I would say. I was a film critic for many years. My favorite screenwriters are Preston Sturges, Whit Stillman, Elaine May, Terrence Malick, Paul Thomas Anderson. I'm more into art house than mainstream film, but open to exploring the outline route rather than pantsing, my preferred route. Great. Yes, this is really, really, really geared towards architecture and figuring out every single step of the way as you work through a feature idea. So it may be a little different if you're used to doing the opposite, if you're not used to all of this work before the script pages actually start being written. But just, I recommend you really try it, because it's such a key part of organizing everyone else who is working on your feature as well. Luke says, I'm resident art weirdo, sci-fi nerd, level design expert. I have too many writers to list. Enjoying Ray Bradbury. My biggest writing goal is just to finish things. I've been writing earnestly for 2 years. Have a habit of only finishing 10% of the art that I start. Also trauma, etc. Would like to take any latent talent and turn it into more skill and discipline. Improving a lot, but barely started. Great. So yeah, it seems like you understand exactly what kind of skills you want to build and where you want to go. Thank you, Luke. Great. Okay, so anyone else can let us know in the chat if you want to introduce yourself or say anything. We will move on from this slide for the moment. So we are going to look at the last ground rules in terms of which idea to choose. So you typically don't want to choose some passion project or something that you are really, really, really deeply invested in. It's better when you're at this stage of just learning how to write features to just commit a couple scripts to the great garbage can, or whatever you want to call it. Like, just already go into it assuming, okay, this isn't going to go anywhere, and it doesn't need to. That's not your objective. And if you can only be motivated by things that will be made or will be successful, this is certainly not the field to be writing in, because 99% of features and 99.9% of pilots never get made, considering they take millions and millions of dollars to actually make these things. especially if you're writing in more expensive sort of production areas. So avoid passion projects for a boot camp. You're just learning the basics, and you don't need to hamstring yourself by chaining yourself to this idea of perfection. You should avoid true stories, anthologies, or adaptations, or rewrites, because all of those will follow slightly different rules than just a straight-up brand new script, and you don't want to give yourself the extra work of doing all that research that a true story or adaptation would require. Just don't write time travel, just trust me. We have seen so many try and so many not even be able to. Never once has a boot camper completed a time travel script in the 2+ years of running these courses, so just don't do it. Somebody always takes that as a challenge and they always regret it. Probably don't do a historical, just if only for the fact that it takes that extra research and that extra time that the 8 weeks does not really exactly give you. If you're really, really familiar with the time period, like you are already like a LARPer or a Jamestown reenactor or something like that, then maybe you can do a historical, but like just be careful with that. And also be really careful if you're newer at writing to manage these things that are actually quite difficult to keep straight on the page. Things like multiple copies of characters, parallel universes, so multiverses and things like this. I know everybody loves their multiverses and Spider-Mans and things like that, but you have to be really careful with that. It's tough enough on the page if you're just starting out to write a straightforward A to B to C story where we understand all the connections between the scenes, the motivations of all the characters, what's happening, where everyone is, and what's going on. Like, that actually takes a fair amount of skill. Like, screenwriting is sort of like, it's not exactly playing the keyboard. You're playing the violin, and it takes a while to actually make the violin make a decent sound without going like, screech, screech, screech. So there's a learning period where you just have to kind of learn how to visually present information on the page in this text media. Remember, it is deeply visual, but also rendered in only text, and that's kind of tough to get into at first. And then beyond that, you have to keep straight so many different things, like where are the characters standing in relation to each other in order for certain scenes to make sense at all. Then to add all these extra rakes onto the track of also there's multiple copies of characters within multiple timelines, within multiple universes, within multiple branching nested subpaths or subplots. Just you're creating a nightmare for yourself, and you're going to be stomping on rakes left and right and smacking yourself in the face again and again. So don't do those things for a boot camp. And if you're writing a story that really relies on like intertwined flashback structures or subplots like Gone Girl or Gillian Flynn type stories like that, really probably you want to pick a different, more straightforward idea. That said, this is the time to take big swings and write something wacky or fun while building the skills and fundamentals. Like if you take the idea that, what if Godzilla became the world's best basketball player? That could be a relatively straightforward story. Just because it's weird doesn't mean it's not straightforward. When we're talking about how to tell a story, it's so different from the subject matter, right? And when I first start with some students, they're like, "What? It feels like you just want me to do like a really boring drama, just like day-to-day normal life drama. I can't do that. My ideas can't be contained within that." And that's not what I'm saying at all. It's coming down to how you're telling the story. You can do a very straightforward story about a wizard that becomes the president. Or you can do an incredibly complex, multi-layered narrative about a guy trying to get a sandwich from a store, right? Like, there's no real correlation between subject matter and complexity of storytelling. So your goal is basically to learn both. You want to be able to portray the subject matter that you're interested in, yes, but in the most straightforward and clear terms possible. Like, not every movie needs to be a Christopher Nolan movie with multiple branching timelines. Like, if you are Nolan, then clearly he only really is interested in telling stories like that. But if you're not that, and you're just learning the fundamentals, you don't want to start with the most complicated dance that is available. Okay, let me just check the chat really quick. Shazadi says, "I work in data, but I'd love writing to become my primary career eventually, despite how difficult that is. This year, I want to rewrite a script I finished last year, and also write another script for an idea I have. I like comedy, satire, and speculative. I have a big list of ideas, and I hope to finish all of them by 2030. Great. Okay, well, a 6-year plan, pretty ambitious. Becky says, "My horror you read is time travel in a limited way, and restrained with it with strong set rules." Yeah, exactly. That was not a boot camp script, I guess, to begin with, and moreover, it was pretty restrained in its use of time travel rules. Joel says he remembers when his sister was learning violin. Yeah, I tried it in 5th grade and quickly did not continue with that. I took up piano instead and was like, wow, it's so easy to actually make it make sounds. Shazadi said, "What if the idea is ambitious, but you need to write a bad version of it first and keep rewriting and rehashing?" Yeah, that works fine. That's a great way to approach it. Okay. So any questions on the ground rules? Any other questions on just the very basics of which sort of idea to choose? Somebody's going to be like, can I do time travel though? Feel free to either raise a hand and speak aloud, or you can type it in the chat. Becky says, is animation okay? I imagine mine being animation. Yeah, the thing is, animation scripts are not really written any differently than live action scripts. You don't even really have to designate within the script itself. So, yeah, totally fine. Go ahead, Luke.
So one of the ground rules is no passion projects. What if you just get really passionate about your silly throwaway ideas when you start working on them?
So everything's a passion project for you?
I guess so. Apparently so.
It's good in some ways. Go ahead.
If I'm working on it, I'm passionate about it, apparently.
That's great, but it's not sustainable for a screenwriting career, because not everything you work on you will not be passionate about. I mean, are you passionate about the Kit Kat movie? No, you have to be like, I will find things... Go ahead.
It was kung fu, like if I could do my own thing with it. But yeah, if I was just writing someone else's movie, yeah, I would not feel passionate about that.
Yeah, you can't always be. Like, we don't have the luxury as screenwriters of always only doing passion projects, unless you want to be a writer-director and fund everything yourself. If you want to go that route, that's completely different, and Godspeed to you. But I will say, yeah, if you're writing the Kit Kat movie, they don't care. It's not their passion project. It's not yours. It's not anyone's. It's a product. And you need to, find something that is interesting to you within that product. And to that extent, it's great that you can make anything your passion project. That's a valuable skill. But you have to have that. You have to maintain a little distance and a little separation from all of your ideas. And you can't look at everyone like the lover you're going to marry or whatever. You have to look at most of them as okay, we had a couple nice dates and that's great. You have to kind of separate and distance yourself from your ideas a little more, because most of them are not going to end up doing what you want them to do or being what you want them to be. This is a path of disappointment and difficulty. And the only way through it is to kind of make the best of the opportunities you get.
Okay, I think that's helpful.
Great. If that sounds annoying, then I would try. Novels are much more sort of whatever you want to do, your passion project is probably the thing to be writing. And writing, directing is similar, right? Because if you're paying for it, you're behind the camera, you're doing all that stuff yourself, you get more leeway to make choices arbitrarily because that's exactly what you want to do. But I guess just in terms of teaching how to be a screenwriter, we try to get everyone at least used to that mindset of, you are not your ideas. You don't need to put all your self-worth into this one project. All your eggs do not need to be in one basket.
If I can learn how to deal with begging people for money constantly, like investors and stuff, if I can deal with that, then maybe I could do the writer-director thing as a long-term goal, but that is... I don't think I can deal with the first thing, so probably... but anyway, I think that's helpful. Yeah.
You could also make friends with producers and financiers and things like this and build your network so that you can have more of a team that does those things, perhaps. But sure. At the early stages, it's just you. It comes down to just you.
I mean, there's crowdsourcing. There's all kinds of ways to do it.
Mm-hmm. But I hope that answered. Oh, go ahead.
With technology advancing so rapidly, any kid is going to be able to do it, and probably some of them will do it better than I'll be doing it. So.
Perhaps, yes. That's why I think we should, try to adapt with technology as it changes, including things like AI. We need to kind of get used to the fact that those are there and here to stay, and work around them and work with them and allow them to amplify our work rather than replace it.
Thank you. I think that's helpful.
Thanks for the question.
I enjoy a good challenge,
You sure do. You always show up at the track with your big bucket full of rakes, and you're eager to hurl them into your path.
That is me, 100%.
But hey, I do too. I mean, I choose projects based on the challenge level that they provide. So there's sometimes if you then dance between the rakes, everyone is like, "Wow, that was incredible. That's cool how he did that."
Oh, I smash into them all, but that 1% of the time something glorious happens in one of the collisions.
Yeah. If you can stagger across the finish line, then sometimes that is enough. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Connor.
A question from Poet. Based on what you said, I don't think I should use the script I've been working on because it's a personal passion script. Yeah, especially if you've never finished a script before. You said you didn't even finish the first draft of this one. You need to learn how to write a script before you can know how to write a good script. And you need to know how to write a good script before you can write a great script. So there's really no way to just leap from zero to great script. There's so many steps along the way and skills to learn and things to perfect beforehand or work towards perfection of. So I would say, yeah, definitely don't do a personal passion project, but write something kind of disposable that you will then use those skills to write your passion project later, and then your passion project will be so much better for it. And if you're really passionate about it, I think that's the best way to approach it. You want to practice before you try to play an NBA game, you know? Too many mixed metaphors. Shazadi says, should I use the bootcamp to rewrite the script I finished in last bootcamp, not necessarily passion project, or start another one for the bootcamp and go back to that later? I would start a new one. Write a new one from scratch. You're almost always going to learn more, especially if you're within your first, like, have you written less than 5 scripts? If so, get those rookie numbers up, and you want to get the reps in, and it's less important to perfect anything you've written before than it is to simply cement these steps in your mind and the organization process and the actual mechanics of writing the next thing. It's better to be able to replicate that and to have a better sense of that and a better handle on that than it is to have improved a script that was maybe like a 6 out of 10 and moved it up to a 6.5, because you still can't do anything with a 6.5. So it's better to have 2 6.5s than a 6.5 and a 4. Wait, I just totally messed up my own metaphor, didn't I? I hope that makes sense what I mean there. Oh, your last script was the first full feature. Then yeah, you got to get your numbers up. Don't worry about perfecting any of them. Like, that's not the goal at the moment. Great question, though. Any other questions before we move on? Let me check to see if the stream people have left any questions or comments for us. They came from the stream. Maybe not yet. That's okay. If you are watching on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, you can leave comments, and I will see them, though it sometimes takes an extra minute for it to show up and for me to see it. But wherever you are watching, you are welcome to also join us on Discord, where you can then participate in the rooms, unmute your mic, and speak aloud, and answer questions and discuss your idea in more depth and things like this. Okay, we're going to move on to our next slides for now. So here's the basic steps. Week 1 is going to be logline and sketchbook, so that's next week. We're not even on week 1 yet. This is all just a big overview of everything that's coming up. But you will have the chance today to share the early part of your logline or start working on your idea and turning it into a logline if you want to. And if you have that ready to go. So if you haven't yet, I would really just open up a blank document right now if you haven't yet done this. Do I have a slide on this? Yeah. I would just do this now. So just go to Google Docs right now and make a new document. Name it title of movie, sketchbook. If you don't have a title of every movie, it's fine. Just call it feature sketchbook. And at the top, you want to just add little categories for these things: title, genre, logline, and comps. If you don't know what any of those things are, we're about to define them, but at least those are the answers you want to try to fill out this week if you can. Maybe today if you already know some of these things. People come to writing movies from all different types of skill level and experience and amount of starting point, I should say, or amount of starting material. Sometimes people come in and they're like, I have to write an action movie that's called this, and it's set in this place, and it features these characters, and I've been thinking of it since I was a kid. Sometimes people are like, I want to do a movie about a bear. I don't know what the bear does, or what the bear is struggling against, but I know it has to be about a bear. Things like that. So it doesn't really matter. You can come to it from any angle, but the first place to sort of correlate the different parts of your, or I should say collate the different parts of your idea and start to organize them into something coherent and that will guide you through the rest of the process, that is going to be the logline. So the sketchbook is a great place to start working out that logline. The sketchbook is just a sort of unformatted, unsorted document where you keep all of your ideas, influences, inspiration, research materials, questions, notes, and any possibilities as to where the story could go or what could happen in it. So you can make this now, and there's no right or wrong things to include or exclude from a sketchbook, and you don't have to actually sketch pictures in it or things like that if you don't want to, but you can always copy and paste in images or links to videos or articles or PDFs or things along those lines. So we start with sketchbook, which is just going to be the very, very first step. You can start with filling in everything that you know. If you know what the movie's called, if you know what genre it is, if you have some idea of what the logline would be, if you know what the comps would be, you can put those in right now. If you don't know those things, let's define those other terms really quick. The logline is going to be that one sentence that expresses what is this story about. It's usually going to include this information. Who's the main character? What are they trying to do? What's standing in the way? What happens if they fail? Those are just the sort of essential 4 questions that are going to kind of make up the backbone of a movie idea. And movie ideas are different than feature ideas, right? Different than pilot ideas. Because a pilot theoretically needs to go on for years and be more of a sort of replicable series of episodic situations rather than one specific story that can only happen in one way. That is what a feature is. A feature is a story that could only happen one time in one way. It should not feel like a series of episodes or a setup for a type of situation that can be explored in multiple ways going forward. It's not a template. It's one specific story. What else do we have? We had... did I have a thing for comps? Yeah, comps. So comps are going to be this movie meets that movie. So you're going to try to express what is the tone of the movie you're making. What are the goals? What kind of action would we see on screen? You're kind of trying to give a very general impression of your aims for the project and what you're trying to create something kind of like. You want to pick things that people know. You're not going to earn bonus points for picking comps that nobody knows, and if they have to look it up, they'll actually be a little bit annoyed. So you want to typically pick something that will be familiar with people, so meaning from the last 10 years, something that was relatively successful, or I would say maybe 20 years is better, something from the last 20 years, relatively successful, or something from older than that that is very well known or well remembered. Like you can always comp like Back to the Future. Everybody knows that, even though it's from 40, 50 years ago. It's fine to comp things that are very much in the zeitgeist or well remembered. But otherwise, if it's something kind of obscure and you don't think people will know it, don't pick that as a comp. Yeah, what else? You can include a couple possibilities if you're like, I have 3 or 4 ideas for comps, I just don't know which are the best ones yet. You can include multiple different options. And ultimately, you're going to try to narrow it down to just 2. So we've gone over logline and comps. What else did you have to include at the top of the sketchbook? Title and genre. I think everyone knows what a title is. You don't need to have the answer right now. It doesn't need to be perfect right now, and it doesn't need to be the final version of what it will eventually be, but having something is useful just to organize yourself. And then we have the genre as well. So genre is going to be only limited to 2 things. If you're listing 4 or 5 different genres, nobody can tell what it is anymore or what you're trying to make. So just limit yourself to a maximum of 2 different genres, like horror comedy or romantic thriller, something like that. Don't do more than 2. It will just be confusing. And that's it. Those are the essentials that you want to try to get down today if you can. So we are going to go more into loglines now. I might just sort of wrap up with the basics of this. I don't really want to go way too into all the grim difficulties of the myths and the realities of working in Hollywood and how to be a feature writer and all these things. I'm just going to kind of boil it down to all this, which is separate yourself from the expectations that you've put on yourself to some extent, or the pressure that you're putting on yourself to write something amazing or something that will start your career or make you money right away. This is hard work. It takes a very long time, and nobody starts out good at this. You must kind of have the humility to accept those things and to say, okay, I understand those challenges and difficulties. I will struggle and sacrifice as I work through this. This will take a significant investment of my life and time. That said, I'm excited to get started and get going. That is kind of what this demands of you. So let's look at... All these slides are just like, this is really hard, but you should do it anyway. Yeah, really, you can boil it down to, you don't have to worry about whether every single brick in the road or in the wall is going to be absolutely perfect. You have to focus on building the road. So go ahead and make those sketchbooks if you haven't done that yet. We're going to talk more about loglines. I want to just pause for a moment and take questions on anything we've talked about so far. Any questions at all? You can raise a hand or use the chat to type. Poet, go ahead.
Sorry, I have multiple windows open. Yeah, so sorry, for today I just wanted to confirm. So for today we are writing a log line? Like we're filling out those 4 things?
Yeah, as much as you can. If you don't have any idea how to even start or don't know what it would even be at all, you can take the week to work on it, and then we're going to try to finish the logline next weekend. So this is like the head start preview week where you have a little time to get ahead.
Okay. So I think I will need some time to figure out if I should go with the thing that I've almost finished or start from scratch. I'm not entirely sure like what my decision is, but so I don't know if I'll have anything to share today, but a week is enough time for me to figure that out.
Sure. Okay. Yep. And you never need to share if you don't want to. I will usually call on everybody, but you can always say pass or it's not ready or anything like that. I won't. You won't be thrown out.
Thanks.
Thank you. Looks like Shazadi has a question. Go ahead. So I've invited you to the stage. You'll just have to click the accept invite button. Yeah, it's not that you're muted. It's that you have to click the little, I'll show you. Yeah, it looks like that. Do you see the green bar that says accept invite? There you
go. Hi. So you said that I asked the question about what if the idea is ambitious, but you need to write a bad version of it first, and then keep rewriting and rehashing. And you said that's okay, but for me, like, that idea is also kind of a passion project. So do you think? Because I was thinking, oh, if I write a bad version, I can keep like I can rewrite it, and then because I do care about this idea. But if you think it's better to just kind of have something that we can be more detached from in this boot camp, I don't know. What do you think I should do?
So if you've only written one feature, right? So
one feature. Yeah.
One feature. Okay. So
Yeah.
Until you've written a bunch, and this is not just you, this is anybody. Until anybody has written a bunch of features, they usually won't have all the skills they need to even take a script from a draft 1 to a great draft 2 or to a great draft 3. Those things might come with time, and you can keep working on this over time if you want to.
Yeah.
The boot camps are more geared towards writing something brand new from scratch, which is also what I think you will usually learn more from and get more out of than working on the same thing for a long time. So I would actually recommend just take this as a vacation from the passion project, work on something new and fresh that just is fun and keeps you coming back, and like you just gain so much more from finishing another thing. I think it's worth doing for that reason.
Okay. All right. And do you recommend then going? Yeah. I mean, before I think you were talking about this with Luke, but do you recommend then just going for something that? Because I think I have a similar problem. I choose an idea and then I end up getting really into that idea. Do you think I should just choose something that I feel like I can be detached from? Because then I'm worried that I won't have much motivation to finish it. But yeah, maybe there's a balance. I don't know.
It's a balance. Yeah, you have to really find the middle path of that. The fact that it's only 8 weeks means that it's good training for being a professional writer, where you're like, okay, I have 8 weeks to bang out the draft of the Bop It movie, or the a movie based on a board game or a serial or something like that. You're not always going to be 100% on every idea, and especially if even if you started as passionate about it, maybe the producers have changed it so much that you don't even recognize it anymore, but you're still on the hook to finish it and see it through. So I think it's just worth forcing yourself through those steps, even if it's tough at the beginning. And maybe, you could pick something that's so stupid you could not possibly be passionate about it, I guess. That is one route. I don't know if... Go ahead.
I was thinking of using ChatGPT and just asking it to give me an idea, and then I'll go with that or something.
You could do that. I've built a logline helper tool using GPT, so it's like a custom app that can help with that. So if you're just at the early stages and just want to give it a couple ideas, and it will help you connect those ideas and make a logline, then that's available as well. Obviously you don't have to do that if anyone doesn't want to, but if you're just looking for an idea, or I could just give you an idea if you want. If that would be helpful for you, or you could crowdsource it. You could ask, what do you guys want me to write? You could approach it however you want. You just need to summon enough energy and fuel to get through 8 weeks of it. And it's really not that much time, ultimately. You'll be done by the end of March. So I think it's valuable to build that skill.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll let you know if I need an idea.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah, I'm glad to just help you brainstorm or come up with something if that is useful for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Vivian says, what are some easy ways to make a character believable, even when they have an out there personality or skill sets? That's going to come down to the emotional truth of that character. Personality and skill set are not necessarily the most important thing, like the most key deciding factors when it comes to things like believability or suspension of disbelief, right? Because we'll watch a movie or show about anything. We'll watch a movie about a demonic clown that enters a rock, paper, scissors tournament against the world elite. This is an actual movie. Do you know it? Do you know the movie I'm talking about? So you can make almost any character compelling and interesting. It's going to come down more, if you are talking about believability, it's going to come down to how well they fit within the fabric of the world that you've built. So they have to feel like they are congruent with the world that you've established, meaning that it could be that your other characters are too normal if you have one character that's really standing out as unbelievable. Does that make sense? So you should look more at the world itself and then at the emotional truth of that character, because we're not going to really be thrown out by your characters doing anything in their skill sets, because we're willing to buy almost anything. What we aren't willing to buy are things that feel like they violate the emotional truth of a moment. Like you have set up a character to be a really angry, hot-headed, hair-trigger person, and then you have a scene where somebody shoves them against the wall and they don't even react. Like, what? What are you talking about? Why did you set them up as a hair-trigger, angry person if then they aren't always, or they aren't going to logically follow that rule until something makes them not follow that rule? You know what I mean? So look at more setting a consistent world with other characters that match the same level of reality as that one character, and look at maintaining that emotional consistency and truth in such a way that the audience will not feel like they have fallen off the ride, because that is more often where you will lose them. And here, this character is not believable, more so than nobody could jump 100 feet in the air, right? We will buy that people can jump 100 feet in the air. We will not buy that a person that you set up as being emotionally one way would suddenly and for no reason not be that way. We have a few more questions. One from Mateo on YouTube. Hi, Mateo. Thanks for watching. What if there's more than one protagonist? So, okay, this is a good question. In the Western world, in this style of storytelling that we're doing, cinematic storytelling using 3-act structure, it is very, very based on the idea of a central protagonist. In fact, this entire process kind of falls apart if you don't have that. It's really, really key to have that one character that you focus on, no matter how many others are in the cast, right? And you can even look at many very complex stories and identify one as the kind of A story, or as the story from which all the others branch and are intended to sort of reflect in different ways and to show parallels between, but they are all really there to support that A story, ultimately. You can write a true ensemble movie if you insist. It's very difficult to do, and you can even try something like a two-hander, in which there's two equally weighted main characters. That's also really, really hard to pull off. I would look at those more as sort of advanced skills. If that's all you're interested in writing, you can go ahead and give it a shot. I mean, you can try anything you want. But if at all possible, you want to narrow down your lens of focus to one central main character and be able to definitively say, this is this person's story. It's really difficult to get a movie greenlit if you're not sure who the story is, or you say, well, it's everyone's story. That just doesn't sound very specific, and it doesn't sound like a very strong choice, and it doesn't sound like we're going to be getting the most satisfying experience possible out of that. So, at least in Hollywood-style writing, in 99% of cases, you want to specify and know specifically and explicitly who your main character is. If there is a two-hander, if there's another sort of really important member of the partnership, you can mention them in the logline. Definitely do. Especially in terms of, like, when this bad thing happens, our main character must team up with this person in order to solve this problem. That can definitely come up. You can mention central relationship in the logline, but you still need to sort of make it feel like it has that sense of focus on one person's story, if you can at all. I hope that's helpful. Okay, let me just check if there's any other questions. I don't see any more. I think Flower had a hand raised a moment ago. Flower, do you have a question you want to ask? Here's a question. Can antagonists of the story be disconnected from the core motive of the protagonist? Like be an obstacle, but defeating them is not the main goal. You can, but usually then we would not really define that person as the explicit antagonist. At that point, they're just sort of one of many different obstacles. Like, in the sense that in a war movie, you can call all of the enemy soldiers are sort of antagonists, right? But it might be like the enemy general is the main antagonist because we're always struggling against him and his forces and his plans and things like that. So the kind of antagonist with a capital A is going to be one that does oppose your heroes in their main goal throughout the entire story. Otherwise, those are going to kind of be, I guess, what you might call secondary antagonists or just sort of obstacles on that path. Thanks for the questions, guys. So, script in 8 weeks. Will this draft be good? No. It's a first draft, and if it's within your first, 10 scripts, it won't even probably be amazing. But we have to move beyond the idea that any individual script needs to be good in order for you to value this craft or skill, or for you to feel like this is worth doing. If you only are motivated by passion projects where you're doing things perfectly, this is not the place to be. Because most scripts won't turn out exactly like you want them to, and when they go through the complicated machine of production, of development, pre-production, then editing, they will be different from how you started. So you need to that's why I'm emphasizing the idea of detaching yourself from your ideas. This is a collaborative storytelling medium. You're not the sole storyteller, and you need to leave room psychologically for people to change this story and for it not to be the thing that it started out as. Here's another question from the chat. Does a story even need antagonists? Good question. Not exactly. I mean, in the sense that we have things that are standing in your hero's way, or what we might define as antagonistic forces. There are events or sort of like things like nature that can act as antagonists for your hero, or even to some extent their own flaws or their own limitations. In certain genres like drama might act as the kind of antagonist of that story, right? If you have a character that's trying to be good, but they're an addict or a serial killer or something like that, and they keep doing things that they consider the wrong thing, then that character is kind of the antagonist and the protagonist. So you can approach it in a lot of different ways, but stories need obstacles, and they need formidable obstacles, and other characters make really, really good obstacles. So no, you don't strictly need one capital A antagonist. It's helpful if you have one, and if you don't have one, you have to replace that role with something better. Question from Vivian, go ahead.
It wasn't really a question, I just had something to add. I feel like I don't know, we might not even think of them as antagonists sometimes because they might be trying to help the main character, but in an unhelpful way. Take, for instance, like a movie about addiction. Maybe there's another character who wants the main character to stop being addicted to whatever drug that they're on. You know what I mean? And the main character also wants that. But the way that the antagonist is going about it isn't, helping.
Sure.
So, what they both want in the end is control over the addiction, and that's kind of what they're fighting about in the story. But, that's where the conflict comes from, is their different approaches, I guess.
Sure, yeah, the antagonist doesn't have to be someone that hates the hero. They don't have to be somebody that's trying to harm the hero, necessarily. They're just standing in the way of the goal. And that can mean a lot of different things, especially in parent-child stories in which the child is the protagonist. Something like Room from 2016, 16? I want to say 2016, the movie that won the Oscar for Best Actress. This is a movie about a mother and son. The son is the main character, and the mom is the antagonist because she's always trying to get him to leave his comfort zone, and his goal is to stay in his comfort zone. So your protagonist and antagonist can love each other. They can be best friends. They can have any kind of relationship, which is what's so cool and kind of dynamic about this relationship between hero and villain, right? That hero doesn't mean good guy and villain doesn't mean bad guy. It just means who are we placing at the forefront of the story as sort of having the priority in them advancing their goal. And we're going to be watching that character struggle and sacrifice to achieve it. The antagonist is standing in the way, whatever that means. Thank you for the comment. Okay, so yeah, lots of different ways to think of and structure hero and villain dynamics. Flower asks, how do you choose a core motive for the character? I would pick a motive that causes them to engage with the premise in the most entertaining way. So whatever is going to allow them to have the sort of fun and thrills, or run into the fun and thrills of your current premise, and allow them to do that most actively and with the most growth that they have to learn. So we want to put them in a place where they're going to have flaws and limitations. They're going to have a strong desire to achieve the goal of the story, but at the same time, they are going to you're going to tune their personality in such a way that they end up running headlong into whatever the conflict of your story is, and we want to see them really interact with it. You don't want to choose a motive for your protagonist that's going to allow them to sort of retreat or back away from the difficulty of the journey. So pick traits that put them in direct conflict with the antagonist as much as you can. Okay, so I'll come back to more questions in the chat in a little bit. I sometimes talk about rewrites, and I guess we've sort of just coincidentally answered this question of, yes, you can do a rewrite for the class, but I think you will usually gain more from not. And also, this course does not include notes feedback or how to address notes or organize notes or things like that, which are pretty key for rewriting. So I can show you this little preview of the rewrite process. Just ignore the date there. This is from an earlier class, but it does start by getting feedback on your own, and you have to get people to read your script, which might be on the server, they might be friends and family, they might be anyone, right? But you do have to do that before you can actually know what you're going to be substantially changing in a rewrite. So I would attend one of our rewrite courses instead, and we also have a few recorded boot camps if you're an unlimited member of previous rewrite boot camps that I've done, which are usually only 4 weeks instead of 6 or 8. So we won't spend too much on this today. I'd rather spend more time on helping shape your initial ideas, whatever you have, into at least something that resembles a logline. So last thing I will say before we begin, I've already given you a million disclaimers and things about how hard this is, but I will just say, so for next week, the goal is to keep working on your logline based on feedback you get today and filling out the rest of your sketchbook with all your ideas, influences, inspirations, research materials, and anything else. And you are also going to start reading. You must be reading 1 script a week at the absolute minimum. I recommend you read 3 scripts a week. It doesn't take a terribly long time to read a script. We're looking at documents that are between 30 pages for a pilot and 120 pages for a feature, or sometimes a little longer. Obviously, don't if you're reading only Oppenheimer and stuff like that. But you can easily get through it. Like, pick shorter scripts if you have a lower attention span and need to build it back up. Pick half-hour pilots. 30 pages does not take that long to read. It is meant to be watched in half an hour. You can read a half-hour script in an hour or less. Everyone reads at different speeds, I know this, but they're just... Try to get used to reading an entire script in one sitting so that you are getting the full experience of that thing in the way that it is intended to be. Oh, there's our Rewrite Bootcamp coming up. Thank you, Nacho. That starts pretty soon, just a couple weeks. Sunday, 10 a.m., Rewrite Bootcamp. Just get your feedback by February 4th. Okay, so let me check really quick. So how do we know, here's another question in the chat. How do you know what's most entertaining? For instance, what I like could be boring for others. You need to be a big enough fan of your own genre that you're writing in. So is that what Vivian said? What did Vivian say? If it's a thriller, they want to stop the threat and solve the mystery. If it's horror, they try to retreat. Oh, she was maybe talking about something else. The majority of people like genre films. Make your own version of a genre film. So yeah, what I would say is you can't know what's going to be entertaining for other people necessarily. All you can do is be a fan of the thing you're writing and write something that you would like and that you would watch. And you have to keep doing that until you get better at it. And you can't worry too much about, are my ideas themselves any fun? If they're not fun to you, that's the problem. If they are fun to you and good to you, they will eventually be good to someone else with enough application and skill. So if you build up your skills and practice enough, then that will happen, and you can't worry too much about it. Don't get stuck on that idea. Okay, so where are we? You are going to be reading scripts every week, and I will ask every class, what did you read this preceding week? So you have to be reading scripts in the course, paying attention, taking notes, and things like this. I'm going to link a huge resource in the chat if you are looking for scripts to read. There's a folder right there. If you click on that, you will get access to tons of modern specs that if you don't have access to them, just click request access and you should get it soon. But you can open the guide document in any of those categories, meaning look for number 0 in the list of numbers, and it should have a directory of all of the loglines and descriptions and genres and management info for all those scripts and writers. So you can use that to make a sort of queue of everything that you want to read and start working through it. Always be adding to it. Always be reading. There's never going to be a point where you get to stop reading forever while you do this, so get used to it. And you need to work on building up your attention span if you have not yet done that. Okay, let's do logline stuff. So let's go into the concept of loglines a little more, and in about 15 minutes we will share early versions of loglines if you have them. I want to just quickly tell you what this is. So logline, we want to kind of get into it pretty soon and start sharing, so I won't go through every single slide, but I will at least go into what is a logline. So it's one sentence. You're boiling down the... One moment, let me just bring it up. Here we go. The central conflict of the story distilled down into one single sentence. You ask, what is it about? This is the answer to what is it about. Your logline will imply some sort of visual action, meaning we're going to be watching your character accomplish goals and tasks with visual milestones so we will know when they are done. It should not just be about purely internal development. It's not a movie. Movies, feature loglines or features are usually not about people thinking about things or discussing things or debating things. It's about people going places and doing things and struggling and with, engaging in conflict against each other and winning things and earning things. That is what we typically prefer a feature to be. It should not feel like a character takes a walk and thinks about life. That's a really experimental style of feature that we don't really see in the mainstream theaters, I guess. You can make experimental films on your own, but this course is more oriented towards writing high-concept Hollywood-style ideas that will get recognition and potentially attention in Hollywood. So that means strong conflict, high stakes, really clear situation that your characters are in that feels like it's one specific situation that can only unfold this one way, this one time. There's a sense of irony or interest to it. There's a strong hook that feels like we haven't seen this exact thing before, and that we know the sort of thrills that we're in for, but not exactly how they will play out. Like, we don't feel like we've seen this exact premise done to death a million times. You're bringing something new to it. So it doesn't have to be brilliant, and if you're just trying to get the scripts down and just get the numbers in and get the laps run or whatever, then you don't have to worry that much about originality or blowing people's minds with the script. The goal is not to blow people's minds. The goal is to finish scripts and then learn how to write and finish the next one. But the logline is going to be really at the cornerstone of this, and a lot of people really do have a lot of resistance to this at first, or difficulty with this at first, because it's kind of hard to come up with that one good sentence that does everything it needs to do. What is it supposed to do? You're trying to persuade people to read the script. That's ultimately the goal. It's like a piece of marketing copy that will encourage people to read it or not. And if they are interested by it, they're more likely to read it. And a well-written logline acts as that barometer of quality for the script, because a well-written logline is more likely to come from a better writer who's more likely to have written a better script. So you're putting your best foot forward. It's like a handshake where you are saying, okay, you are in good hands already. You can trust me, and you're in for a good experience here. It's also going to help you and serve as that kind of compass during your outlining and writing process, so that you know what you're working on and you're actually working on the same thing that you were at the beginning than you were at the end. You can make sure that all of your sort of premise scenes come back to this central idea, and it's going to give you a head start on your outlining by already placing a couple things in the general structure, so you'll know sort of where a couple things need to unfold just based on the logline alone. Logline basically looks like this. They don't always have to follow exactly this format, but this is a good starting place in the basic questions that we want to have answered. When or after the inciting incident, otherwise known as the catalyst, an adjective protagonist must conflict before stakes, or ticking clock. This is telling us the thing that starts the story off. That's the inciting incident, the first major event that pushes our protagonist into action. An adjective protagonist tells us who is that central main A story character, the adjective being chosen carefully to describe them in such a way that makes it feel like this person fits in this story. It's not just a guy, right? It's a manipulative guy, or it's a hard-working businessman, or it's an unlucky in love single mom, or it's anything else, right? Like, you need to pick this description of the character carefully. And because people can be described in multiple ways, you may need to try a few different iterations before you get it just right. Must conflict, that's telling us what visual interesting thing do they have to do to succeed in this story. You know, he must sell 35 cars in 30 days or else he'll be fired from the dealership. That's giving us both a clear sense of progression, goalpost, ticking clock, and also stakes. He will be fired if he doesn't do this specific thing by this time. So that's what makes a useful logline for us, because it sort of gives us the brass tacks, just really hard facts of here's the main character, here's why we care about them, here's what they're doing, here are the stakes, here's why it matters. It's a lot to do in one sentence, and it takes a lot of practice to get really good at these. If you have some version of that, in about 10 minutes I'll ask for you to share it, and then I can start helping you organize it into a logline if you don't know how you would do that, or answer questions about it, or help guide you, or pick a genre, or anything else that you need. So I would start in your sketchbook right now, working on what the first version of this might be for your story if you have it. It doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be any good. But just if you can assemble some sort of sentence that explains what it is that you're trying to write, that would be great. And in 10 minutes we will post and share them. I'm going to show a couple examples and take questions on them first while you guys are working, but at 11:30 Pacific we will share the loglines and give feedback. So let's just bring up a couple examples to begin with. I'll just show you guys some of mine, which have been from my most successful scripts. Every one of these scripts has either placed in a major contest or been set up at a major production company. That said, I wasn't the one to write all of these. I did not write the logline for Hintline. That was very much guided by my manager at the time. And you can also see how as you iterate on these and as you work through them, sometimes you realize, I don't really need to state exactly what would happen if the character failed. We can sort of understand the stakes through implication or things like that. It takes a lot of reading and writing loglines to understand what can be implicit versus what can be explicit. But I'm just going to give you an example. A sensitive boy in Nazi-besieged Leningrad must hunt down the cannibal that ate his friend. Just made for a really simple and straightforward and to-the-point logline that I felt I didn't have to include. Like in the first version of this, I included, or else the killer will strike again and kill him too, right? But I felt like that was kind of suggested, right? He must hunt down the cannibal that ate his friend. We're understanding that this is an act of revenge and like a very emotional motivation for the main character. But also the fact that it's a murderous cannibal, we can kind of get that that's a dangerous person that could strike again. So I didn't feel the need to fully explicate I didn't need to reiterate the stakes, if that makes sense. So you don't always need to use that exact format. And if you feel you can cut something off and we already understand a certain aspect of that, that's fine. So start with that format if you don't know where else to start, but you don't always need to stick with it all the way through to the end. And then you can see, like, for instance, Hintline, that's 2 sentences. If I had written this would have been 1 sentence, because I think loglines can always be expressed in 1 sentence. But if we were to rethink that as 1 sentence, it would be something like, when a young assistant calls his tip line thinking that it's an emergency service, a jaded game designer must guide her to safety over the course of one harrowing night. Something like that, right? Like, you could just smash those sentences together rather than write that out as 2, like my manager did. Besides that, hopefully these are helpful for you guys. You can see just like the basics of this person must do this thing by this time. That's pretty much what a logline looks like. You can leave a little bit implied or implicit if you need to. Okay, we're looking for a sense of irony, a new or interesting point of view, some variation or interesting mashup of some kind of familiar elements. If you have 1 foot in the familiar and 1 foot in the strange, then you will be in better shape in terms of a high concept idea, because a high concept idea does not mean more complicated. High concept doesn't mean more complicated or any one particular subject matter. It is referring to high reliance on the execution in order to sell that idea as a feature film. And we don't really say low concept. The opposite of high concept is execution dependent. Execution dependent being, okay, I can see how this is a story, but it doesn't jump off the page as something that is so hooky and interesting that I think people would show up at the theater based on the premise alone. If your movie idea is something like, an aging artist struggles to accept his growing irrelevance in the world, it's like, I can kind of sort of see what that is. I don't really get the movie necessarily. Maybe it's amazing. Or something a little more down the middle, like something like John Wick, right? It's like when he's attacked in his home and a retired assassin must come out of retirement and get revenge on the bad guys. It kind of feels like every Hitman movie ever made, so what is special and unique and interesting about that doesn't come out unless it's in the execution. So I would try to learn to write high-concept ideas and understand how they work. If you want to be as employable as you can be in Hollywood and be the writer that people come to and pay a lot of money to, then you have to at least know a high-concept idea when you see it. But that said, you don't only have to write them. You can write something that it does not have to be a really hooky 90s comedy or whatever. Okay, so that's just some basics on loglines. They don't have to be great today. They don't have to be good. Don't worry about it, and don't expect it to be perfect right away. In 5 minutes, we'll share those, but before we do that, let me just take questions on loglines or premises. What have you guys got? Feel free to raise a hand or type in the chat if you have questions. Becky, go ahead.
Hello. So one thing I always struggle with, whatever format I'm writing, is finding suitable comps. And I didn't know if you had any tips on like what sort of things to look for in comps, especially if your idea is kind of something like a twist of two very common tropes, but like done in a different way.
Sure. If that's the case, then the comps are even better, because if you have this trope meets that trope, then you want to find one comp that exemplifies the first trope and one comp that exemplifies the second. So it's usually helpful if you start out with, it's the world of this, but with the tone, style, or approach of that. Does that make sense? So that's how you can kind of clarify, like, and it doesn't always have to follow that. That's not an exact science. But that does just make a nice little shortcut where you say, it's the, let's say, I don't know, it's going to be Mean Girls meets Kill Bill, right? Okay, so it's set in the world of high school teenage relationships, but it involves kung fu, right? That just kind of becomes a nice way to express the core hook of the story. And so when you're looking for comps, first of all, this is one of the few areas that I will really recommend AI, because AI is fantastic at doing searches and correlations and connections between things, and can very quickly, a large language model could very quickly pull up like 5 potential comps that you may have thought of or may not have thought of, but they're very good at this. But that said, you should typically... Sorry, say that again?
Is it okay? Thank you.
Sure. But besides that, look to things like the emotional tone of the experience. So we want to know the type of movie you're trying to make and what it's supposed to make us feel. And we also kind of want to know what's possible in the world. So that's kind of at the basics of genre, and it's also at the basis of comps. What's possible in the world, and what is it going to make me feel? Cool. So obviously, if one of those things overpowers the other, if you're like, oh, it's set in like a work camp, I'll comp Schindler's List, but it's not a super sad, heavy-hitting, depressing movie, it would have been really weird that you picked a comp that the emotional tone of it overrode the subject matter of it. Do you see what I mean? So sometimes it will take people down the wrong path, especially in terms of subject matter, where you're saying something like, this is a historical adventure movie, like Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Oh no, that movie has magic and monsters in it. So you're sort of saying your movie also has magic and monsters in it. So you have to kind of be careful with your choices sometimes, not taking people down the wrong path, and where they will be most led astray is in terms of what's possible and the emotional tone. Hope that's helpful. Thank you, Becky. We have a question from Luke. So Megan says, are we supposed to post our loglines now? No, just wait. Just in a couple minutes, we will post those. Luke says, tips for loglines that are ultra weird and have little to no comps. What has little to no comps? Let's pick a pretty complicated movie. Do we agree that Inception is pretty complicated? Can we agree on that? Some people are going to be like, no, it's not. Luke is going to be one of those people that says, no, it's not. Okay, what do you consider to be a complicated premise, then? Like, Eraserhead? Like, what do you mean? Like, pretty much the only things that can have no comps are going to be really experimental, but then you can comp Eraserhead. Do you see? Like, then you have that to comp. comps are built for movies in the Hollywood system. They are not built for experimental films. You don't need to comp your experimental film. You don't need to say this is going to be like Eraserhead meets Un Chien Andalou. If people are coming to experimental films not for their commercial potential, they're coming to it for its specific execution. Experimental films almost can't be high concept. Do you see what I mean? So, by the way, Inception is Heat meets Paprika. It's pretty, like, I think a lot of... You may not agree. Many people would think that's a kind of a complicated story and movie. But you can very easily boil it down to two things. It's the world of this and the style or approach of that. And within the world of experimental too, I'm sure Eraserhead had things you could have comped it to. I'm not really familiar with the surrealist short film movement of the era. Okay, any last questions before we share loglines? Thank you for the questions so far. Good questions, everybody. We have a question. Are audio description option in movies good to listen to? Oh, you mean in terms of writing? That's a good question. Yeah, pretty much. So they're not always going to be the exact wording of the script. It's not always going to be like exactly how the script would have been written. I would maybe instead of that read along with the script. Or there's also a Chrome extension where it, with Netflix at least, will display the script alongside the movie. I would look into that. I'm not sure what it was called. But yeah, audio description can be a good way of sort of, if you're having trouble connecting just like what would have been the sentence that I would have used to describe what we're seeing on screen right now, that can actually be a good way to start building that. So especially if you're not a native speaker, I would try that out, definitely. Nobody's brought that up before. Thank you for that. Okay, any last questions? If there's no more questions, you can share loglines now. Try to share whatever you've got. So if you've got genre and comps and things like that too, you can also post those. And we have only half an hour, so I'll get to as many as I can. I can't guarantee I will get to every single one, but we also have another free week 1 next week, so you will have another chance to do this. I'm going to get to as many as possible and try to give you guys feedback on these loglines. All right, we'll start with Ash. Looks like he or she posted first, so you do have to be able to answer questions and speak aloud, so I will invite you to speak, and you're going to read your logline out loud and also talk about it. Hi, Ash.
Hello. Okay. So it's my logline is a young woman tries to find happiness for her humble butler to save him from her abusive father. That's kind of for the most part. So.
Okay. Thanks for this. So is this a drama?
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. As opposed to, you think it might be comedic in some way, you mean?
Let me see. Maybe a little, what I want to say? I don't know. Drama, maybe some comedy and stuff like that, but I kind of already... It's based off of Talkie. Do you know that game Talkie?
No, that's a game? I've never heard of that.
Or not a game. It's kind of like an AI type of thing where you chat back with them. But I don't know. The story came out from that, and so like it just ended up. I really liked the story, so I wanted to write something based off of it. So.
Okay, so you're going to reapproach this as a feature, you're saying, right? So this was a short or something like that before, but now you're going to expand it?
I think I'm going to do it as a short for right now, and then if I can figure out more to the story, I probably will turn it into a feature, yeah.
Okay, so since this is a feature bootcamp, do you want notes that would help you move this more towards being a feature?
That would be great.
Sure. Okay, great. Let's take a look. A young woman tries to find happiness for her humble butler to save him from her abusive father. So to begin with, it feels almost more like this is the butler's story than the woman's story, because he's the one that is in the danger, and he's the one that's suffering, right? So I would just ask to begin with, why have you framed her as the protagonist and not him? Is this really her story?
It's kind of because she actually is interested in him, and she cares about him, but she isn't sure if he likes her or not, so she's trying to get him away from this abusive relationship that he has with her father and stuff like that. So like she's trying to find somebody for him so he can leave the premise, I guess. Something to that extent, yeah.
You said you mean she's in love with him?
Yeah, she is in love with him,
She's in
but
love with him. Okay.
yeah, but she doesn't know how he feels about her, so she is trying to help him by leaving some way, somehow, and that's the only way she can think of him leaving is by helping him to find somebody to be in love with. So.
Oh, but not her. She's just like anyone that he's in love with will help.
Well, because she's still at the house and stuff like that, number one, and then she doesn't really know if he really cares about her or not, even though he does secretly love her.
Mm.
She doesn't know that, and so she's not one to come forward and say something. Like, she's very reserved about how she feels about him. So,
Okay.
I don't know. She's kind of like a more sacrificing character, I guess. So, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, it's seeming to me like this is drama/romance, right? If this centers on this relationship. Okay, so that's important.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. And also, the fact that she's in love with him needs to be in the logline. That's really key to her motivation. So it's not just her humble butler. It's the butler that she's in love with. It's her secret boyfriend or whatever it is, right? Like what you have to kind of clarify what that relationship is. So that helps us understand the motivation more. It's not just some employee of mine that I decide to help out. It's I need to save the guy that I'm in love with or else something bad will happen to him. Then it starts to clarify the stakes a little better. So try to rephrase it a little bit along those lines. Another thing is the main character. A young woman just doesn't tell us much of anything. A young woman could be a 16-year-old or a 30-year-old or like just so many different states that could describe, and it doesn't really tell us much about her personality. So you want to describe your main character in such a way that we understand maybe what they're struggling with or the way they're going to grow or the tactic that they're going to use. If she's like rich and sheltered or something like that, she's gotten everything she wanted her whole life, that could be important. Or if maybe she's the rebel rich girl, right? Maybe she's the outcast, something like that. So maybe think of more how to describe the main character that makes her feel like she fits in this story and this will be a difficult and important and specific challenge for her. So maybe think of, especially because she's going up against her father, think of who would that be really hard for? Is she like a sheltered, I don't want to say daddy's girl, it's so annoying, but like teacher's pet kind of like thing, type of, relationship where, I do everything dad wants because I want his approval so much. That would make this way harder for her if you set up the character in that way. So you may just need to make some choices that can be clarified in just a couple words within the logline that...
Right. I think she's more afraid of him. I think she's more afraid of him than she wants to please him and stuff like that, because I don't know. Yeah, like the way the story goes and stuff like that, she's more afraid of him than anything, so, yeah.
Okay, then you'll have to figure out what makes your character unique or the way that you want to describe them that makes it feel like this is the right journey for this person to be on. Yep. And this will be difficult and specific and interesting. And the last thing, in order to save him, is there something specifically bad that is going to happen to him if he stays? Is there some deadline approaching, like his contract is coming up and it's going to be renewed, and like he has to decide if he's going to stay locked in with the dad or something like that? If you can find some kind of more tangible milestone like that, then that would be helpful.
Yeah, so it would basically be she told her father by accident that she's in love with him, and he's repulsed by that, and so she's worried that the father is going to do something to the butler and stuff like that, basically. So, yeah.
Okay, but so just being worried about it is one thing, but in the logline itself, you might want to clarify what the actual threat is. So she needs to save him before the dad, I don't know, locks him up in the basement? Or, like, what's he going to actually do?
Something.
Right?
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So, or if there's some deadline coming up that he needs to decide, am I going to stay or leave by that time? Or something like that. You just need to kind of create a sense of urgency for the story by adding that end point.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's the major three things. Any questions?
No, not right now. I just, that's kind of what I had in mind, but I'm glad that I talked to you because now I got a better idea of what to do. So, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'll put that in the chat for you, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Let's move on to our next one. We'll go pretty quick. Becky.
Hello.
Hello.
So this came up in Willow's wordplay that she does in the bootcamp server, and I kind of really liked it, so I came up with this in there, and it might make a good animated movie. Everything's up in the air to change at the moment.
Okay.
As the title, Celestia's Labyrinth, animation, adventure, family. Comps would be the adventure of Indiana Jones and the Goonies, but with the humour of Jim Henson's Labyrinth and the energy of Tangled and Brave, like that kind of feeling. It's obviously a kids' movie. When her little sister gets sick from the new plague, a daring yet insecure 13-year-old must navigate the ancient Celestia's labyrinth to find the elusive Ember Orchard before her sister dies.
All right, thanks for this. So, the new plague, I'm guessing, is like a new version of the Black Death or something like that is starting to spread through the world of your story. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we'd probably want to come up with another title for that, but that's kind of a stand-in at the moment until I can come up with a better one, if that makes sense.
Okay. And as long as you're going in with you are fully aware that people are weird about plague and disease stories nowadays, so you have to really commit to, I'm definitely going to do that. So, because the first note you'll get will be like, but does it have to be that? You know what I mean? Like, can it be a curse or something instead of a plague or something along those lines? Will be just a note
can be a curse.
that you get.
Well, I mean, if we're going along the Jim Henson Labyrinth lines, what if she curses her own sister and then has to undo it?
Sure. That's a good motivation. And has a built-in arc where, if that's the nice thing about the main character, we mentioned this a couple days ago, if the main character caused the problem, then that comes with a nice arc of now I have to fix the problem to redeem myself. The bones are here, and it feels like we're just missing the secret sauce. Like, I don't know what has bones that you put sauce on, so the metaphor does not work, but like, it feels like the essentials are there. I know the inciting incident, essentially who the main character is. She's trying to navigate a labyrinth to get a magic thing before the sister dies. But, like, why is this different from Labyrinth? Or, like, what is in the Labyrinth? Or what tactic does she use to overcome it? Or who does she have to team up with? Or anything else? I'm just kind of missing, like, I get the world that we're in and the type of story that it is, but I just want more specificity and something to get excited about.
I mean, that's why I called it Celestia's Labyrinth, because I like the idea of, I suppose then Percy Jackson might be a good comp. I like the idea of taking the treasure hunt stories, but making it be something that's linked with, like, pantheon gods lore, like some kind of pantheon gods, you know? Sort of more, it's magic, but it's not magic in, like, the way that, it's not magic in the way that Harry Potter's magic. It's more kind of like celestial magic, you know. It's more kind of like godly magic type thing. Okay. And I imagine that she'd have to, like, the thing about it is that you can only get this, whatever the MacGuffin is, if you're like pure apart. So her reason for going in would initially be somewhat selfish, even if it is to save her sister's life. She's only looking out for her sister. And then did you watch the new Disney movie Wish?
No, I don't typically keep up with Disney movies.
Had a lot of potential. One of the things that annoyed me was that the character arc wasn't really clear. She started off just caring about her own grandfather, when actually the whole town was suffering. And I think that would have made an awesome arc where it's like she's doing it purely for selfish reasons, where she's only interested in her own blood, and then realizes, no, actually she's the one that's got to bring down evil for the betterment of, like, everyone who's living in this country. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I imagine this being, where, like, starts off just caring about her own blood, but in order to get past the trials of the labyrinths, she has to like realize that you can't just use this flower to save her sister, you know. She's got to save, like, the town, you know. It's that kind of, and the trials are to teach her those positive values, you know. If she can't pass the trials, she won't get in. It's that kind of deal. Okay,
so this is you have more experience than most writers who are just starting out here, so you've written a logline that works. I think you just need to zero in on what the hook is, because that like extra few percent that goes from like 7 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. Like that gulf is sometimes difficult to bridge sometimes, especially in a genre that's very saturated. There's a lot of a lot of kids media is fantasy adventure based, animated fantasy adventure based, and so you have to like make yours feel a little hookier, I guess would be the main thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is to that, but I hope that helps. I think the essentials are there. I get the movie. I just want to see the movie.
I feel like that kind of magic's also come from when I actually start developing it, because obviously I only came up with this on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, for a first attempt for week 0, week 1, you're in good shape. But just get more specific, get a little weirder. Like, it's so on track, and I feel like I know the ride I'm on, which is great. But then I want some surprise. I want something different.
Yeah. Oh, I'll talk to Luke about the weirdness factor.
Yeah, Luke's got you. He'll come up with something that can't even be compared for it. So that'll be helpful. Thanks, Becky. Okay, let's keep on going. We had our next one from... Is Luke next? Yes, he is. Okay, Passionless. Go ahead.
Yeah, the idea, so if I'm going to write a bunch of screenplays to get better to write my passion projects, why not write something that I'm passionless about? And here it is.
Great.
This is one for the list. So, I have 2 attempts. I think the second one's a little better, but anyway, I'll just read the first one here. When he's cast as Jesus in the school play, an antisocial introvert battles sudden depression and an unraveling academic life to meet the religious expectations of his peers.
Okay, and the second one?
When he develops sudden depression, an antisocial introvert cast as Jesus in the school play must fight to keep his spot or disappoint the religious expectations of his peers.
Oh, okay. These are a little different. So let me read it again. So when he's cast, so you've sort of set 2 separate, you've sort of explored 2 different catalysts, right? One of them being when he's actually cast. That sounds to me more like a catalyst, as opposed to developing sudden depression, which is not exactly like one clear moment or thing that happens usually, right?
So no, it could be. I'm imagining it as a moment of like sudden onset depression. That could be what the whole movie's about. If that's what the title is, that could be the incident.
I guess that's not really an incident, though. Like in most people's lives and how it works in real life, right? Most people don't really identify, oh, that was the moment I became depressed, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah, most people. It would be a freak occurrence, yeah.
Right. So in writing a movie where your comps are 2 realistic dramas, to make a freak occurrence, the emotional motivation for the whole thing already feels wonky.
Sure, and it doesn't feel... it feels more like a comedy than a drama, the way I'm describing it. But I'm visioning it as a drama, so...
Sure. So maybe we'll start with the version 1 right now, just because I am able to understand that one in terms of your objectives and the story a little bit more clearly. Just off the bat, I'd like the idea of him fighting to keep the spot. That was nice, but let me just maybe you can combine these a little bit. So when he's cast as Jesus, an antisocial introvert, I really get it. It does feel like a comedy, but I do like it. The basic setup so far. Battles depression and an unraveling academic life to meet the religious expectations of his peers. It's actually working pretty well. Must fight to keep his spot to meet the religious expectations of his peers. So I guess, yeah. So it almost seems like if other, I think actually the first one is working mostly better, because I'm not sure if you could set it up so that people are fighting for the slot and he's having to fight them off even though he doesn't really want it. I feel like at a certain point he could just be like, oh no, they got it from me. Sorry, it wasn't my fault, guys. Like, it feels like too easy of an out.
Doesn't feel like what the movie's about either. So. Yeah,
so this feels less like I have to be king of the hill and take down all my rivals like Mean Girls style, and more like he's battling with balancing everything else along this thing that he would never think to do. And there's a certain relatable element to this. I mean, I was a theater kid, but like, there was always that person that didn't want to be in the class that got cast as a role. They're like, oh crap, how am I gonna do this, right? So I think the first one's actually working quite well.
Okay.
Antisocial introvert battles depression and unraveling academic life to meet the religious expectations
of
his peers. Is there like a central relationship you can bring into this, though?
A central relationship? Maybe, maybe not. If it's about a passionless person, they're probably like aromantic, asexual, so there might be like an anti-love interest, perhaps.
What's that? What's an anti-love
like-
interest?
Like someone pursuing the protagonist, but they're not interested.
Oh, a love pest, as we might call
A
them.
love pest, okay. Or several.
God, several.
know, there's-
Is this turning
there's
into another harem anime all of a sudden?
No, it's central relationships. It could be an instructor, professor, whatever. Depends on the age.
Yeah. Or, I mean, a
Parents.
priest. Is he, like, if he's concerned
Yeah.
about how well he fits into the religious culture of this society, right, then it seems to me like it might even be a
I
religious...
think it's probably a mentor type figure that we wouldn't think of. So it's probably one I haven't thought of yet.
Drama teacher would be a good start, but just a thought. So
It would be a good subversion of that expectation if the drama teacher was like the one he confided to, but they ended up sort of betraying his trust, and it was I'll come up with a good one, but the one you didn't expect that is the actual mentor figure that he listens to by the end.
the accompanist, certainly. So I would think that the reason I identified that is because to meet the religious expectations of his peers is a good set of stakes, but you started him off as an antisocial introvert, and you didn't set up that he's like that's going to fulfill anything in particular for him. Is that answering a need that he has? Like, is this his opportunity to become popular or something like that, and that's something he craves? Or is this his like opportunity to have friends and this... It is?
It could go that way. I'll have to think about it. I wasn't really imagining it going that way, but
Well,
I don't have
go
a
ahead.
clear like Act 3 in my brain.
So if he starts as an antisocial introvert with no friends, and then he stays that way, and then he has the chance to lose the part, and then he's still back to being an antisocial introvert, it doesn't really feel like we've gone on much of a journey or arc with him.
Yeah, it's he has to learn how to deal with sudden popularity
Great.
and depression, I guess.
Okay.
Whatever.
Try to hone in on that a little bit, just because we want to know if it's going to be a dramatic story where you've only mentioned one character in the logline, then it's going to really hinge on their emotional development. And if this event that's occurring is going to be kind of like a freak occurrence, out of the bottle kind of experience, like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought I would be cast as the lead in the play, then that has to lead to him actually getting something he wants. Otherwise, we'd just be like, well, then just drop it. You don't have to do it. Like, if you don't want to do it, they want you to lose the part. So we have to either understand that this is in service of getting something he really wants, or although it is difficult, it offers the possibility of something that he would really want.
All right.
So see if you can
it could
amp up
offer
that.
him.
Go ahead.
It could be his like academic salvation in a way. I'm not sure how I could work that into it, but I'll sleep on it.
Okay, give it some thought. That was my first instinct, but the basics are there. I really like the setup of it. Thanks, Luke.
That's helpful.
Mhm.
I'm still gonna work on Santa side though for the boot camp, if anything.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks lots. All right, let's keep going. Vicky.
Hi.
Hi, Vicky. Do you want to share your logline with us?
Yes. This is like an experiment I'm gonna do, as I
Okay.
said, because this is like the book I'm working on.
All right, let's get into it. Go ahead and read it.
Okay, after getting exiled from the dragon's den, a death witch will have to learn to become a dragon rider as she figures out the truth behind her coven's massacre.
Okay, and this is a movie, right? It feels a little like a TV show the way you've set it up here, but let's look at the basics. How to Train Your Dragon, Harry Potter, Narnia. Okay, pick two of those. Don't give us all three. That just feels like way too much. Probably, yeah, don't do 3 comps. So, after getting exiled from the dragon's den, the dragon, I don't know who the dragon is, a death witch will have to learn to become a dragon rider. Why? As she figures out the truth behind her coven's massacre. How does one of these things lead to the next thing? This feels like almost 3 separate events. Does that make sense? This doesn't feel like one event that leads to the next event that leads naturally and organically to the next event. So, does this start with when her coven is massacred?
No.
No? What do you mean? How could it not start that way? Didn't you say that she's trying to figure out the truth behind that? Why would that not be in the movie?
I could do that as the catalyst, but it's not exactly where it starts.
You haven't written it yet, though. How do you know where it
mix,
starts?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I'm trying to mix what I have from the book and what I know the story, the backstory of the things there.
You're trying to adapt an unfinished book.
No, I'm trying to play around with the story beats I've got in the book, thing. Because
Okay.
I know the story beats, but of course the books is gonna be different. But
Right.
I was trying to play with them around.
Okay. So I don't understand the catalyst as you've presented it. Why was she exiled? Did she live in a dragon's den before? Do death witches live with dragons? I just don't understand the correlation between the events here. I think this needs to start with the first most important event. When her coven is massacred, a witch sets out on a quest to figure out why, right? But in order to do that, here's the reason why she needs to become a dragon rider first. And then we will understand how this conflict will lead to the solution to that problem. Right now it feels like 3 separate story threads.
Okay. I can say my main idea, but I didn't know how to put it in logline form because I was trying to cover everything, and usually that's what leads me to peril sometimes.
Okay. You had a different version of it, you mean?
I don't have it written, but I have it in mind.
Okay.
It is mostly how you said it, it would start with her, the catalyst being that her coven is killed, and after that she has to go to investigate into the Academy of Dragon Riders because the general that set up the motion for her coven to be killed is in charge of this academy at that moment.
Okay, so you need to set up the inciting incident as when the general of the dragon, or when the lead dragon rider murders her convent or coven, right?
Yes.
Okay.
She doesn't go to kill them, but she sets the thing in motion.
Okay,
She's
so
the one that gives the order.
okay, so that's the villain that we're going to lead up towards a confrontation with, it sounds like. So when the lead dragon rider murders her coven, a witch enrolls in the dragon riding academy to get revenge, or perhaps something like that, I think is what we're leading up to get justice, to become a dragon rider and get justice, something like that. Does that make sense? So you can start with the inciting incident, which is the cause that leads to the effect, which will then lead to another effect, or will ultimately lead to the finale.
Yeah, that's more what I was trying to explain, but I didn't say it well.
Okay, no problem. Well, start there and see if you can make that work.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Hope that helped. Let's keep going. I will run a little bit over our normal time just because I want to get through as many as we can, and I think we only have 2 or 3 left. Okay. Let's see. Megan, is this a feature logline or is this your book logline? This is a new feature, perhaps? Let me invite Megan up.
Yeah, this is a new idea.
New idea. Okay.
Well, not a new idea. It's an idea for a second book.
A second book.
But it could also potentially go feature. I haven't decided how I want to write it yet. I haven't decided anything about the second one yet, other than the main theme.
Sounds good. Rebellious hat. Oh, well, do you want to read it for us?
No, because I'm on my phone, so please go ahead.
Okay. A rebellious half-angel and a sassy succubus embark on an interdimensional quest to find a missing angel in order to prevent the impending apocalypse. Nice. So I think that for this, you need to center it in on your main character. You need to clarify who is the protagonist of this. I understand that you're sort of maybe doing like a a more of a two-hander romance team-up type of story, perhaps. But even then, if you can frame one, like in your novel that you have now, you still have one sort of, this is who we open on, this is who we start with. It's ultimately going to be her story, right? So I would clarify protagonist, first of all. And then they embark on the journey. Why? What is the catalyst? So it seems like when the apocalypse is looming, but maybe you can think of a way to phrase that in terms of a specific concrete event, right? So when the King of Hell emerges from his ancient slumber and threatens to blow up all of Washington, D.C., or something like that. Do you see how you can just kind of give us a catalyst that is more clearly expressing what starts this off?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking one of the catalysts might be the arrival of Lucifer on Earth. So.
Sure. Arrival of Lucifer. Okay. Must they embark on an interdimensional quest? So that means they're going through like a multiverse of a bunch of different dimensions. Is that right?
Yeah. They're gonna have to go through to what they think is another dimension. It actually turns out to be another planet, but same difference.
Is it just one other dimension they're going through, or is it many?
I don't know yet. I don't know whether they're going to go to 2 or whether they're going to 1. I have not pinpointed this yet. This is really in its infancy.
Okay. So if it's going to be just one place they go, then I wouldn't describe it as an interdimensional quest. You want to say, they go to a dimension of pure water. You know what I mean? Be more specific as to what the place is they're going to. Whereas if it's like a multiverse, it's like we have to go through 100 different dimensions, then maybe it would make a little more sense just to describe like the type of quest that they're on. But it's just kind of hard to picture, right? So if you can, if this is a story about these people teaming up and going to another world, we want to know what the other world is.
Yeah.
In order to prevent the impending apocalypse, we'll add up more once we know what the catalyst was, because we will know what specifically the threat was going to be.
Yeah. I have to figure all of that out.
Mm-hmm. But good basics. I think that the sentence is well written, and I get essentially the kind of journey that we're on. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. And you see the comps too below it, or
yeah. Mr. and Mrs. Smith means Supernatural. Okay. That's good. Or maybe what's it called? Good Omens might be a good comp as well, because that's also sort of about the the angel and the demon teaming up kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a good one as well. Good comp.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Megan.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's keep going. Taylor. Oh, 3 possible titles. Hi, Taylor. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, I was going to say. Getting no audio from you, though. He can hear me, okay, but maybe having trouble with the mic. Because we're on a time crunch, Taylor, I'm going to call the next one, but I'll come back to you just afterwards so you can fix the issue if you need to. Let's do any more. Decoding Charlotte. So I've invited you to the stage. You'll have to click the accept button. Any more? Is any more still here? Yes, looks like it. So you're on the stage. You'll just need to unmute your mic now. Oh, yes, I think I hear you now.
Can you please wait? I'm just having a difficulty.
I'm sorry, it's actually so quiet. I've turned your volume up all the way and I still can't really hear.
I said go ahead, please read it.
Oh, wait, I hear you now. Okay, that's working. Great. So can you read your logline for us to start with?
Yeah, sure. Let me see it. Yeah. Facing execution for burning her empty house, Charlotte denies the shocking discovery of her burnt family, which is found from inside. A relentless cop and a determined judge must race against the time to uncover the shocking truth. while Charlotte herself harbors unexpected plans in prisons, risking everything for her exceptional task to be done at all cost.
All right, thanks for sharing this. Let's take a look. So, mystery, psychological thriller. You say she's harboring plans to carry out some kind of exceptional task, but you don't say what it is. What task is she working
Yes.
up to?
Yeah. It's a part of the mystery, and it remains throughout the whole series. So it's like she set her house on fire, and she has one more task to be done, and for which she needs to be out of the prison.
Wait, you
So
said
this
this
is
is a
another
series?
task. Actually, it has a lot of events which go through all the time. So I think it could be a series, but it can be condensed into a film. I see in both ways, but it's kind of subjective because I don't have much experience about it, because I have written it as a novel and it's around 350 pages.
Okay. So we're gonna have to, just for this course, this is a feature course, so we're gonna approach it as if it's a feature film, and I have to give notes on it just as if it would be a feature, a brand new feature premise, not something you're adapting. And so we'll have to look at this as if it's brand new. The first thing is, I'm not sure who the main character here is. Who's the main character? It seems like Charlotte is in jail, so who's acting? Who's the most active character here?
Actually, there are three characters going on through all the time. It's the main character Charlotte, and a cop and a judge. So they are all like Charlotte is planning something inside the prison, and these both the two characters which are outside, they like decode her, and they meet their own past, which let them confront their own humanity. But they've been all the time good, or is there something wrong that made her go through all of these things that she is in the prison? What's wrong? What's the problem there? Why she burned her own house, or why she denies that she burned her family? Why she thinks they are alive? So they figure it out.
Okay, so it seems more like you. Well, first of all, you're gonna have to pick one main character. Don't give us three main characters, especially if
Charlotte is the main character.
she is. But what is she doing in the movie?
Actually, she gets a lot of things. She makes prison break plans. Most of the times, like she gets 7 days to act on, and she meets a person in a prison who might believes her that she is innocent, and he helps her a lot. And he gets 3 to 4 breakout plans, and because she has to done her exceptional task, and she finds ways throughout, and sometimes she fails, and sometimes her own rules come in front of her that doesn't let her make a break, but finally she gets out. But that's the judge who helps her break out. She couldn't get out on her own.
Okay, so I'm confused on all of the basics here. I don't understand what the main character is doing, or why, or like why would a judge have to race against time to uncover the truth when judges, it's not their job to
Yes.
do that, right?
Yeah. Actually, he was very well satisfied until a thing happened, and which led him to confront his own past. And he realized that he has made a grave mistake once time that led her love life gone away, because he was not a mature enough judge. And when he announces Charlotte's results, but then something triggers him, and he thinks that he cannot repeat the same mistake, as it has never happened in past many years, but he feels like it's happening. So he risks everything to make sure that he is not going to miss justice again, like he did before, which
Okay.
finished his love life.
Okay, but so they suspect that Charlotte is innocent, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you figure out who your main character is. Is it the cop? Is it the judge? Or is it Charlotte? I mean, I think if
It's
you're...
Charlotte the main character.
It is Charlotte. Okay, so is Charlotte trying to prove her innocence?
Yes.
She is.
She is not denying that she didn't fire the house. She accepts she did, but she denies that her family was alive. She says that they were gone. But of course, 3 bodies are found from inside the house, which a cop and the judge doesn't understand why she denies where 3 bodies, but they are so deadly burnt that their faces cannot be recognized. But she says they have gone to Alaska. They don't belong to my family, and this world is just making up things to make me confront something that I didn't do, which she didn't kill her family. Which basically she says. Actually, the plot is she has been manipulated by her stepson who is uh, who is a survivor from the burnt house, but he is in coma. So the central mystery, like the main plot, why she set her house on fire, it unravels through him when he tells that he manipulated her because he has a sort of sexual desires for her. So
Whoa. Okay, so
it's
that's a bit much
ends
for
this
the
way.
log line alone. So let's just one sentence, right? Just the basics. So it sounds like it's something like this, right? So when she's arrested and sentenced to death for causing the death of her family, or when she's, maybe we could just say arrested for causing the death of her family, I don't know exactly how you describe her, adjective, protagonist, teams up with a relentless cop and a renegade judge to prove her innocence. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so start there. Try to condense that down into one simple sentence that starts with the first event and then leads us through the rest of the events using Charlotte as the center point of it. So she's the hero. She's trying to prove her innocence with the help of these other people. Does that help you there?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, great. So we're just trying to simplify. Just stick to the basics. We don't need to include all of the information, but we need to know what your main character is trying to do. And so try not to leave this task or this plan that she has. There can be a mystery involved, but for the logline, we need to know at least generally what is the hero trying to accomplish. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. Hope that gives you a good place to start.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think we have just a couple more. Let's do... Taylor. And then we will do Shahzadi's, and then I think everyone else posted a little later than the deadline, so we'll end after we finish with Shahzadi's. But anybody who did not get theirs read this week, come back next week, same time, and we'll have another opportunity. We're just more than 10 minutes over at this point, and I have to get to a meeting. All right, Taylor, why don't we start with yours?
Cool. My mic's working.
Great. Yes, sounds good.
Cool. Yeah, so I had a few different titles I'm throwing around. It's a drama, Comps Before Sunrise, My Dinner with Andre, Worst Person in the World. The logline is, after being fired from his dream job while in England, an alcoholic musician stays in Europe and attempts to create a life with an indecent florist he barely knows, while simultaneously trying to hide his addiction.
All right. Thanks for this. So you've picked maybe my least favorite genre, which is the walking around talking and doing nothing genre, but that's okay, because the situation is interesting here. The only thing I'm kind of missing from this is, what does create a life mean? There's no actual goalposts.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm stuck on this. It's basically comes down to moving in with this person, and it's two emotionally stunted people in their early 20s. I kind of described it as like a coming of age of two people who are already of age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's two people trying to do what they think is being adults, and while simultaneously doing something incredibly irresponsible, moving in with people you barely know. And so I guess in like that context, creating a life is this musician trying to find a new job in a city where he has no business being, starting a relationship with each other, and just, I guess, generally trying to be adults when they really are not adults at all.
But what's at risk? He'll be deported from the country because he lost the job?
Further succumbing from the stress into his addiction, really just running out of money while trying to find a job. It's kind of some of the stakes I have set up at the moment.
So if he fails, he'll have to leave, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can maybe clarify that a little bit. It's not that he's trying to create a life. He's trying to find a way to stay in the country, I think. It sort of sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And creating a life is just his way of doing that. And then, lastly, if she finds out about his addiction, will she break up with him or something? You already described her as indecent, so I'm wondering what the connection is there. Like, who is he hiding this from?
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of like stuck on if I should make it more that she's completely innocent, naive to the real world, instead of making it some kind of crass person who's also heavy alcoholic. There's some things I could probably play around with there of two people enabling each other.
Yeah, maybe that's the threat, or maybe that's just adds to the conflict, right? Like he's like, oh gosh, I found the perfect place to stay. Oh wait, she's an alcoholic too. This is going to be really bad for me. And maybe that could kind of be how you lean into that aspect of it, perhaps, rather than if she finds out she'll leave me. Maybe make it, oh god, now we're on a hurtling train together that we can't get off of. A little like what's that movie, Smashed, with Aaron Paul?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of the direction I would probably prefer to take it.
Okay, so I would factor that into it. And so the stakes are both he's trying to prevent getting... It's almost a ticking clock then, in that case. Great. So the stakes are the goalpost is I'm trying to find a way to stay in the country. Maybe by a certain deadline would be nice, but if you don't have it, whatever. You're in the walk around, do nothing genre, so it doesn't matter that much. But, sorry, it's a perfectly valid genre. It just doesn't always follow all the same guidelines as the ones I usually am writing and watching. But yeah. So you have the goalpost of trying to find a way to stay in the country, maybe a time to renew his visa or something, like if you can like connect it to the rules somehow. And then the ticking clock is before they tear their lives apart, or before he lets the relationship tear his life apart, I think is the risk. And that's why like he has to find a way to either make a home with her or some other way of staying in the country, if not that. But that's what we're going to start with. That's like his tactic for the movie.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it sounds good. Writing down all these.
Does that make sense? Any last questions on this one?
Nope. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for sharing. All right, Shazadi, last one. Everybody else, I'm sorry not to get to you. Try back next week. We'll finish with this last one here. Tamarind and turmeric, or spice of love. That's a very rom-com-y type of title. So your mic is still muted, just if you didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, Shazadi. Can you read this out for us?
Sure. After inheriting a struggling Indian food truck in a remote English town, a down-on-his-luck chef must reconcile with his estranged family and revive the town's love of Indian cuisine.
Nice. And what background is the chef? He is American. Go ahead.
I was thinking, because I only just came up with this idea, but I was thinking he lives in like another city in the UK and he hates the town that he's from because he was, I don't know, it's like this kind of middle of nowhere English town. But yeah, he then inherits this food truck and has to go back, and he doesn't really speak to his family, and he doesn't know how to cook Indian food, and he's quite a bad cook. You can see that I wrote that he's a chef, but I think I was thinking I should change his occupation, actually.
Well, is he Indian or origin or heritage or no?
Yeah, I was thinking he's like, yeah.
Okay, this is just a different story, right? If he is versus if he isn't. So
he is. Yeah.
More about reconnecting with his roots or with his heritage and traditions.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, it does work, but you just need to mention that in the logline because that's a really essential part of the character arc there. So after inheriting a struggling Indian food truck in a remote English town, great setup, a down on his luck chef. I'm not sure exactly how you'll fold the description into the logline necessarily yet, but must...
Yeah, I'm changing that now.
Okay. Must reconcile with his estranged family. Why? And revive the town's Indian cuisine. Why? So we're just missing the stakes and urgency and kind of timeline or ticking clock. So does he need to reconcile with his estranged family to learn how to make the food?
Yeah.
There you go.
Part of it.
Okay, mention that for sure. Is there a specific member of the family that he's going to need that can sort of represent the traditional old-fashioned, maybe not old-fashioned, but the his heritage and that side of things, like maybe someone that hasn't sort of adapted as well to or maybe I'm using the wrong terms here, but somebody that hasn't assimilated as much into English culture, could you find that central relationship and say it's going to be about him and his mom, or his like long lost cousin, or something like that? If you can just get a little more specific, especially for, you mentioned romance in the title, we need to know who is it a wait, if it's a member of his family, how is it a romance, first of all? And then yeah, wait a minute.
Oh no, romance is like, I was thinking of having like a subplot, like a romantic subplot.
Oh, okay. If it's just a subplot, I don't include romance in the genre title, or in the genre description, because that comes with all these promises, and we're like, well, where's the relationship? Where's the central relationship? If that's the case.
Okay.
So if we're just doing a dramedy, then that's totally fine. Mm-hmm. I would still highlight that central relationship if you can, unless it's going to be he must reconnect with a cast of eclectic characters from throughout his extended family that he can't even communicate with at first, or things like that. If you can find one person to center it around, that'll usually be stronger, and just lead to a better, a poster with them together in front of the truck, that sort of thing. Then revive the town's love of Indian cuisine is interesting, but it doesn't feel urgent right now, because, I mean, you said his truck was struggling, but there's not actually like a deadline on this, or some opportunity coming up that they have to capitalize on, or some again, just time specific event. Like, is there some big food festival coming up that he needs to make a good showcase at in order to convince people that they like Indian food again? Something along those lines so try to find that more specific milestone, opportunity, or deadline that's approaching that will force him to act within a certain time frame.
Okay. So you said also try and find a way to mention his kind of his own ethnic origins, or
if that's a part of his arc, and it sounds like it would be, then yeah, for sure. As opposed to, I'm just your average white English guy who now needs to figure out what Indian cuisine is at all. As opposed to, this is my family's heritage that I've moved away from, and now I need to move back towards it, and sort of find the balance between these two worlds. That's like just the difference in this in the arc, right?
All right.
Any questions?
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much for sharing. Strong foundation to this one, so just a little bit of adjustment, and you'll get it there. Okay, so we're 20 minutes past at this point. I'm sorry, guys. I can't do any more loglines. We have to wrap up. But we'll have another free session next week, same time. In the meantime, you can be working on your logline and using all the feedback if you got some feedback this week, or just be updating your sketchbook, coming up with more ideas, more characters, scenes, lines of dialogue, whatever else you want to put in there. And start reading scripts. It's essential that you read a full Blacklist script before next week in detail and pay a lot of attention. Don't be on your phone the whole time. You have to read it. And be willing to say what you read and what you learned and things like that. It's not like a quiz, but that's the essentials. You can sign up for unlimited membership, which will include the rest of this course. You have until the end of next week to do that if you really want to. I'll take those. Maybe one last question from Michelle before we wrap up today. Go ahead, Michelle.
So the type of script we should read from the Blacklist, should it be in our genre?
If you want, it's better just to be like, it's good to just be reading scripts at all. So if something else catches your eye and is really interesting to you, you can read whatever. But if you have a choice, yeah, it's useful to read things from your genre.
Okay, I don't even know what my logline, I don't know what genre it fits in. I don't know if it's disaster or if it's historical or both or what.
Looks like both.
Okay, all right. Well, and we'll go over mine next week. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I'd recommend read a historical script. There's a bunch to choose from on there. Okay, thanks so much for coming, everybody. It was a great session, great questions, great discussion, but we do have to wrap. We'll see you next week, same time, for more Feature Boot Camp. Come back with adjustments made to your logline, and if you haven't shared a logline yet or I didn't get to it, then you will get priority next week. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great rest of your weekend.